Welcome to Emotional Sobriety, the next step in recovery, with Dr. Allen Berger and Thom Rutledge. Are you pretty rooted in what your true and your false is these days?
Were you there when I talked about emotional sobriety and relationship?
Yes, I was.
So the we, right, and the I, that's inside each of us, right? Both of them. So adding your true self is balancing out those two forces, being able to act for yourself without being selfish and be able to act for others without losing yourself. It means that you're honoring your we and you're honoring your I at the same time. So that's what your true self looks like, is when you're honoring both of those things. So when you're talking to somebody else, it's being aware of what you want, but it's also being aware of them. It's keeping the empathy for them and for yourself at the same time. Easier said than done. There's no question about that.
Allen, you look comfortable.
I'm still jet lagged a bit.
What if you doze off? We'll start whispering. We'll be very quiet.
If I could just put some words to a friend of mine, Roy Castleberry, took his life just as I was leaving from Maine to Ireland, and he was a crucial figure in my own recovery. 35 years sober up till the day of his death, and he was a dear friend of my uncle's who passed away from cancer right around my sobriety date. I was in rehab when my uncle's funeral was, and I was contemplating pulling out early just so I could go. But the family kind of like said, hey, this is what Herman would have wanted. You stay where you're at and you get healthy. But anyway, Roy did that wonderful attraction not promotion dance when I was towards the end of my using, and he would go with me to House of Pies in Houston, Texas, and just kind of, he started in Houston at the Salvation Army, and he'd found a way to make recovery work for him, and we would go to movies together, and we would nerd out for just talking about pop culture, arcana, forever and ever. And but he didn't do meetings, he didn't do fellowship, and he drew inside himself. And he got crossed up with me and with other family friends, and he made himself inaccessible in his sobriety, and it caused a lot of just bitterness and consternation, and I suppose one could call it like a kind of dry. He had like a dry. He was pretty dry for as long as I've known him, despite being physically sober. And I guess like he was having some health problems and financial problems, and he had decided, and this is what he left in his suicide note, is he decided that there just wasn't any other way out, and that he was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and so he he died. And I suppose I'm bringing this up on the show just not only because I love him and I just wanted to put it out somewhere, that I miss him, and it's really tragic for me that he's gone, in my mind, too soon. But also, I think like the emotional sobriety component of, that there were family members and there were friends who were who were knocking on his door, and who were figuratively, and letting him know like, hey, my aunt was going to build an ADU on her property to house him, if his finances got so bad that he couldn't cover his overhead. And, there were, he had access to health care. There were people that were trying to help him, but I don't think he was not making himself accessible to that help. And, I think he had that alcoholic thing that I have, that a lot of us have, where, he didn't consider himself a part of, and he saw himself as being alone, even when he wasn't alone. And, right. I feel like, this emotional sobriety stuff that we talk about week to week, I wish that there'd been some way for that to reach him. And if so, maybe he could have had some more good years of life left. So, just wanted to say that. So, yeah.
Well, let me jump in there then and say there's two. I mean, I always say there's two things. There are actually two things this time. It's like the one thing is something we probably, I don't know if we've talked about it at length at all on the podcast or not, but is suicide and suicide ideation and our relationship to that's a very important thing, and many of us have had lots of experience from various angles on that. But before we do that, right now, just listening to you right now, I want to ask you how you're doing, because this is tough news for you.
Yeah, I feel I'm about to celebrate my 7th year of sobriety, and I've never felt more rooted in what I'm doing, or like I've never felt more at ease, I guess, with like the way my life is, and that it's a new life. This is distinct from the life I used to have.
It's highly populated with us, whether you like it or not.
Yes, I like it very much. And but like I just he was like an essential character in my cast of characters, and now that cast has been reduced, and I like.
Well, so I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I guess I am putting you on the spot. How are you feeling?
I'm always bad at answering that question.
Well, I mean, most of us are, especially in a situation like this. It may be none of my business on the podcast, but it's like we do tend to go to what we're thinking rather than what we're feeling.
Yeah, I'm sad. Just very briefly, like we were estranged at the time of his death. He would get into this habit of friending me on Facebook and then unfriending me and then refriending me, and we would get crossed up over politics. And I sent him a Christmas card a couple of years ago, basically saying to him, "Hey, man, like you and I are both kind of passionate about what we believe, but it's Facebook. It's not real life. And my love for you transcends whatever ideological differences we might have." And I was trying to give him an off ramp, basically, to like, look, who gives a shit whether or not we're Facebook friends? We're friends, and and I value you for this and that. And then the last I ever heard from him was he sent me a card back saying, basically not taking the off ramp and saying like, kind of missing. I think he was missing what I was saying, and he was kind of returning to the, whatever the politics stuff was that we were crossed up about, and fuck off, and or not fuck off, but he was basically, rather than to kind of meld with me and what we had shared, he wanted to focus on the differences, and I wasn't able to to keep him in, and I don't take that personally, but I regret that. I think I always just wish that I had more time for everyone that I care about, and I'd run out of time, and I was unable to circle back to him in the rotation before he left, and so I feel sad.
Now I'm generalizing, because I'm just saying, okay, you just said something that's a beautiful thing for a takeaway for me from this podcast, and for other people I think too, is just a distinction about focusing on differences or not. It's like, because that's the challenge there. I mean, and we've all had relationships like that. And I'm not trying to say anything against him. Just say it's different. I think I talked to you guys about my friend Tom Wellfelt years ago when he was dying of pancreatic cancer, and and this man, he was richer than Jesus, and I don't think Jesus was really rich, but I don't know where that expression comes from. But he and I were just completely opposite ends of every continuum, and we met in college, and we've loved each other ever since. And we just, with the help of a friend of ours, we just put all of that aside and just said we're just going to love each other. And that was before his diagnosis or anything. So I was just so grateful, because I didn't even think about it, but that's exactly what we did. We didn't focus on differences. What we had in common is we thought everything in the world is fucking hilarious, and so we focused on that, and we loved each other through that. So I'm sorry for your loss, and sorry your friend's gone, and it sounds like as there's a line from St. Elmo's Fire. Andrew McCarthy said the line, but I always think about in times like this. I think this was probably true for your friend. And he said, "Me, well, it's not easy being me. I don't think it was easy being him."
It brings up a lot, and I too really feel for you, Patrick. It is a loss, and I know it's hard for you to feel those things. It's part of this is learning how to experience our feelings and to be able to welcome them in recovery. And it's something that a lot of us takes some time to do. And I so appreciate Thom bringing you back to the sadness you're feeling and grief. It's a loss, and and maybe there'll be moments where you say, I should have done this or I should have done that. That's part of the grieving process too, and thinking about what you could do to respond to a family member who's so isolated and has isolated himself, as you, very, very, I think, wisely pointed out. He really isolated himself. He was a dry drunk. There was no question about it. And, but I think that his suicide can teach us all something, as every suicide does, is that you can get to a place where these one psychologist, Dr. Firestone, and his daughter, they're both doctors Firestone, they noted that when a person commits suicide, there's a part of themselves that they call the anti-self. It gets so strong that it eclipses everything else inside of them. Just like I like Thom's Tequila Boy. I mean, when Tequila
possesses you, it takes possession.
Tequila Boy was active. There was no other Thom. Thom was Tequila Boy. Anti-self has one mission: to destroy you, is to convince you that you're better off being dead and that everybody else is better off without you around. And anti-self can start to gather a lot of evidence depending on what's going on in our life, as we start to isolate.
I never heard that term before, but one of the things that, and as I assume you have too, Alan, I've worked with lots of situations with suicide, and one of the things that, that I am absolutely convinced about just from experience is that anybody who kills themselves literally does not see another option, and they're not making a choice between this and that. They come to that place, and this is the only choice. And so that anti-self and that complete eclipse of what you're saying makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no, and that's what it does, and it is cunning, baffling, and powerful, just like Tequila Boy.
Yeah, yep.
Once that part of us takes over, it's hard, and especially if we don't see one of the things that depression does, because there's always depression. When anti-self gets going, he grows out of depression. Right? Depression is the host environment that makes anti-self possible. But what depression does, invites anti-self into the picture, is that it maximizes the problems and it minimizes one's resources or possibilities to deal with them. And when that happens, boy, anti-self gets ahead of steam. I mean, it starts to really gain some speed on that track. A lot of coal is shoved into that steam engine, and it starts to really campaign hard, man, for, you're better off dead. The pain will stop. You won't be a burden to everybody else. Nobody understands you anyway. It goes.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said, Alan, it's just, excuse me for interrupting you, because it's just like you're just really resonating with me. It's like that, because I'm also thinking about, actually I'm thinking of one particular client of mine that committed suicide years ago. I mean, because at times I remember with this particular fellow that I would listen to his problems. I would talk to him about what we could do to solve it. So there were some real problems he was facing, but they were all solvable, and they never were, from my perspective, anywhere nearly as dire as of course he saw them. But it's like that was the powerlessness. Now that I think about it, the way you said that, it's like that had became, and it wasn't that he minimized the other options. He lost touch with those other options, and it's So, and so we're not just talking about how to lose this battle. One of the things I just want to introduce is one concept that I learned a long time ago that I've definitely used in my life many times, and probably most recently during my cancer treatment when I was feeling so bad. Is and I don't remember if I made this up or somebody taught me this or whatever, but it was like I call it the commitment to acting against my own will. It's like, which I think we have to have as sober people. It's like that means if everything in me seems, whether suicide's one thing. I'm just talking about alcohol. It's like there have been times where everything in me, it felt to me like a fucking earlier in my recovery, a unanimous vote to drink. And it's like I had made the decision now I remember who I agreed that with to basically what I said was my right hand has made a commitment to, this was before internet and all this other stuff, but to pick up a phone. And the first time I ever used it, it was a fucking payphone. It's like to pick up a phone, dial in the number and hold that up to my ear and talk to somebody. And it's like, and if I had not made, I don't know what would happen, but if I had not made but I think about that frequently. I make that commitment to do that regardless of what my opinion is. It just really is. I don't know how I don't even know how to explain it. It just, I trust it that it overrides anything because I've made the decision to do that. I hope it holds.
You've called it a policy. I always like that.
Our heart just goes out to people who get lost in that stuff. And we do understand. I feel like I do understand that they can't see other options. So the only help there is a policy you establish ahead of time.
There's just this fabric that we're all bound by and we're all together. The person who decides to leave does not see themselves as a part of the fabric, but his friends, definitely considered him to be a part of it. And when the fabric's cut, you feel it.
Let's just say this to those people out there that might be listening to us that are struggling, is that it's very important to understand that the anti-self is wrong.
Wrong, yes.
Wrong. And sometimes you need to help someone be able to come into your life and help you see what's really going on. Right? I mean, it really is important. And you can't do that when you're just listening to that part of yourself. If you're in that place, please try to get help.
And you can hit any of us up. There's the email in the show notes. So reach out to any of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I heard from a lot of fans of the show over in Dublin, and I felt very cool for a little bit. And you know what? A lot of them brought a lot.
I felt very cool for a little bit.
Yeah. That is all faded, but
I like that.
But a lot of people brought you up, Thom, and I think that like
I wasn't there.
I know, but you were kind of like the. You were the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
I bet I make a better impression when I'm not there.
I don't know. If we're to take all the positive responses we're getting, then yeah. But so it was great to realize that that this show has some reach, and that I feel very encouraged just to keep making these to try and. To strengthen what we have and then to expand it.
Listen, I thought it was phenomenal conference. I mean, I am still jet lagged from the trip over to Ireland, and
Allen just dozed off.
He did not, but I am jet lagged too. I feel like I have cocaine hangover.
It was a remarkable experience that we had over there. One of the things that's happening, for me with all of this stuff, there's so much out there. And that's what Reimagining Recovery, that's what the conference is about, is showing people there's so many different ways that you can start to work on yourself and help yourself discover new possibilities for your recovery. And, it all comes to facing the second half of that first step, or as Ernie Larson says, is taking the first step.
Yeah.
Realizing how unmanageable our lives have become, and not just because of our addiction. And see, that's the important thing that people are seeing. And I think that hopefully that we're getting the word out about is that, our problems started well before we picked up the drink or we turned to drugs other than alcohol, whether it's eating disorder, whether it's you're a sex addict or a love addict. I mean, it doesn't matter what was going on, is that these are all symptoms that need to be addressed, but the underlying cause of them is so important to tackle. And that's what the conference is about, is really helping people, understand that and see these things and see other possibilities. I mean, IFS was strongly represented. Tian Dayton's work she was over there talking about the use of psychodrama and, that experiential approach to therapy. Polyvagal theory and therapy was presented over there. You went to that session, I think, Patrick. I mean, there's a lot of cool things. Jamie Marich talked a lot about trauma and the importance of dealing with that in Trauma and the 12 Steps. I mean, it was the breadth of it was really important. I think that one of the things that some of the comments from some of the people is that it stirs up so many feelings. There may need to be space for doing some work with people or creating an opportunity for people to kind of process and to deal with some of the things that are coming up. Now, look, Tom and I have done conferences before. That stuff lends itself much more to an intimate workshop than dealing with a room full of 100 people. I mean, it's very hard to do that kind of work. So, people suggested breakout groups, people breaking off into smaller groups. But then you got the thing of how are you going to get enough facilitators in all of these breakout groups to join them? It's a challenge when you do something that is so stimulating like this. Is in addition to, somebody said some of the sessions may not have been a good idea to put on Zoom because it doesn't give people an opportunity. So I think there's a lot to learn from the organizers. But look, if he's going to do it again, if he can do it, because it's a very expensive enterprise. The university, it costs a lot of money just to do the university. Having the Zoom people set up all the equipment and the audio visual stuff, that's not cheap.
Oh man, about that because I watched you and Andrew do your evolution conference that's when we got together at first. It's like I mean, what you guys were amazing, and first of all, you were completely busy constantly to do every little detail. But the other thing was, it was just it had to be expensive as hell.
It was. And I think that he's facing that thing now. I mean, he kept the price down so much, didn't he, Patrick? I mean, I don't know what the registration was, but I think it was something very reasonable, like $60 a day or something like that. And he could have charged twice that much easily. And I'm just hoping that he ended up being able to cover his bills.
Yeah. Patrick is, he's a real, I mean, he hustles and he's really good at what he does. And because I think he had his career for a while was in concert and like event planning and things like that. So he's got like the chops to do it, but he's also just a real like decent human being, and I think so it's a wedding. This event was a wedding between, his acumen and, doing these events professionally, but also like he's a recovering person himself. And he wanted to try and get as many people on aboard as he could. So I think it was for me, I was exhausted. Like you said, I was jet lagged on the Dublin end. And so I felt less a participant as a recovering person in the event, and more, I was working it. I was helping with the Zoom room and with different kind of administrative things. But I'll be editing the videos on the back end, so hopefully those don't suck, and more people can watch some of the cool stuff that was discussed there.
It's a work in progress. That's so cool. I mean, that's the thing. And I don't know Patrick well, but that I do know that like what you were saying, Alan. It's like you can't know these things until you do them. It's like in terms of what's going to work on Zoom, what's not going to work. It's like somewhere you just got to dive in and roll your sleeves up and try things.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
You know what was interesting? We're all attending a conference, and it's not an AA meeting. I go to a lot of AA meetings, and those have a particular energy. But this was like, I was just wondering, like when like engineers get together for like an engineer expo, I'm guessing a lot of them, because they're all connected in that professional capacity, just spend a lot of time talking about how nuts and bolts fit together. And so for this recovery conference, the lunches it was like recovery nerds, like we were all just talking about, our brains and, our relationship to our different types of addictions. And I just started to kind of like see it all in the third person at a certain point. And it was funny to me. I don't know, just like people talking at length in their free time about like, wow, I can't believe, this new wrinkle I discovered about like, why I'm obsessed with this or that. And, yeah, I don't know. I don't go to a lot of these, so this was like kind of a novel experience for me. And, I recommend it to anybody who's like in this for the long haul. It's, if you decided to do it, you might as well learn as much as you can about it.
That's right.
No, it's interesting you said that, because I will say something about what I was doing while you were gone. I did my first. I'm getting ready to do the second one, but I did my first White Inner Child Work Matters.
Yeah, how did that work out, Tom?
Oh man, it was amazing to me. It's a Zoom workshop that's just it really back to my roots, because when I first started into when I came out of the guy who taught me was Bedford Combs, who was disciple of Sharon Wegscheider Cruz, who was a disciple of and a student of Virginia Satir. So it's like that to me. I consider that kind of my lineage. Like we do sponsorship in the program, and it's like so much of the work began with inner child work, and it gets and I just, the more we've gotten into the emotional sobriety, the more I've gone back to those basic things. And this was a great. I mean, I hope that I got good response from the group, but for me, it was a reminder of that I needed to not forget those basics, to get down and to start there where that is, and don't assume. It's like what you said about everybody in this community. You were sitting around, they were talking about all these things. One of the things I was reminded of in doing this 3-hour workshop is I got to remember, and this is something I've been told before. I have to remember that everybody is not having damn as much fun as I am. It's like and so we were doing. So I really got reminded with this that I might be having a great time, but if people are new to this kind of work, it's tough. It's scary stuff, and it's like. If I'm not careful, I can be really, and not intentionally, but I think I can be disrespectful of that, because I think I forget. I sometimes don't stop to think about how hard it was when I first did this work. It's like, and so this was a great reminder to me about that, because this group went deep in a very short amount of time. It's you guys know that first of all, just a 3-hour period of time, but then also on Zoom. But we went very deep into this stuff, and and it really I was fired up, and I wanted to do more of it. And Alan, I tell you what, it makes me miss going back to workshops. It makes me miss being in the same room with people. It makes me want to be doing retreats again and have people, be there with us. So because I've been so thrilled that we can do experiential work on Zoom. It's like I was surprised as hell when that happened, but I've not been doing that with individual clients for a long time now, and I'm glad I can do it, but it's still not the same. Because you're doing some of those workshops in person again, right, Alan? At Dolestown, it's like I mean, those small groups when you're really working with that stuff, it's so amazing, and I miss it. Yeah, we're doing another workshop on why inner child work matters, June 21st. And if I always tell people that we're there, and Alan, you'll get this. It's not the same workshop we just did, because I can't do the same workshop twice in a row. It's impossible for me to do that. It's just it'll be a continuation of what we're doing. So if anybody's interested in the inner child work, email me and join us.
Absolutely. I'll get the info for that in the show notes.
Okay, thanks.
I was just noticing that, like, whenever, let's say, like a fellowship or any kind of, group is, when they're talking about solution, in recovery from whatever it is, the solution is in emotional sobriety, because that's what they're talking about, whether their lives are going great or going poorly. It's about, their attempt to live life on life's terms. But that, I just had never thought about that until recently, that like emotional sobriety is really encompassing all the conversations we have on the other side of, the decision to not use. And yeah, old news to you guys, but I don't know, to me, it just kind of.
Well, no, it's it's news that need to be renewed in our minds. I mean, it's like, because you're right. There's nothing new under the sun anyway. I mean, basically, we're all, whatever we're doing, I learned this as a human being. We're just relearning shit, and we, and that's what we do. We relearn it, but this is such, it's such a wonderful, to me, it's such a wonderful concept and it's been there right before our eyes, as Allen's pointed out that Bill was writing about it from early on. It's like, and it is, we were talking about it when I first got into the program, and people were talking about, we talk about dry drunk. We're talking about, well, he's sober. He's dry, but he's not sober. What does that mean? Well, really not emotionally sober. And I always quote my first sponsor in saying there's 12 steps of recovery. Only one of them mentions alcohol. The rest of them are about how to be a better human being.
All my strangulated fantasies lie dormant on the shelf. They waited there too long for me while I was not myself. I was really tired when I opened fire and I didn't have a chance to think. I was out of time and every line got farther out of sync. It's a curious condition, I don't know what to do. No open-minded social theories seem to pull me through. Well, I'm sick of life on credit and I'm tired of paying dues. But it looks like there's no other choice to choose. How can you win? How can you win? How can you lose? How can you lose? Looks like there's no other choice to choose. Never make the headlines and you'll never make the news when you've got no other choice to choose. All my plans I've made, I've rolled away like a rug without a floor. Things that were great helps to me aren't helping anymore. There's a crisis on the internet and a witness at my door. Daily noise gets louder, becoming harder to ignore. Mind is going 30 in a zone like 65. Life is going by so fast it's locked in overdrive. Well, I'd like to slow it down a bit and put it into cruise, but it looks like there's no other choice to choose. How can you win? How can you win? How can you lose? How can you lose? It looks like there's no other choice to choose. You never make the headlines and you'll never make the news when you've got no other choice to choose. All my visionary concepts are just sedimentary dust. Just like that guy who once proclaimed he thought therefore he was. Like to dig down deep inside for strength to help beyond. But my inner strength account is long since overdrawn. One day when this is over and it's time to lay me down, offer me a cannon, shoot me in the ground. And if one guy would ask you why I never did refuse, well, I thought there was no other choice to choose. can you win?
How can you win?
How can you lose?
How can you lose?
It looks like there's no other choice to choose. Never make the headlines and you'll never make the news when you've got no other choice to choose. How can you win?
How can you win?
How can you lose?
How can you lose?
It looks like there's no other choice to choose. You never make the headlines and you'll never make the news when you've got no other choice to choose. No choice to choose. No choice to choose. No choice to choose.